Whether we are talking about Eddie Brock or just the symbiotic being known as Venom itself, both these characters have had some pretty weird romances, and weirdly enough, some pretty great ones as well. After all, weird doesn't mean bad, it just means unusual. And some of these strange paramours seem to work for Venom and are actually great matches. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. Today we're going to be highlighting some of these bizarre love stories and attractions as we count down the top 10 weirdest Venom romances. And remember, this is Venom, who is already inherently pretty weird, so just prepare yourself, cause yeah, it's gonna get an extraterrestrial, out of this world level of weird up in here. Alright, now let's get counting. Number 10. Venom and Clint Barton. Things get pretty weirdly kinky with these two characters in the New Avengers Annual issue number 3 from 2009. Here we see what happens to Clint after he goes after Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. He is being held as a prisoner and is being interrogated. I don't know if we'd call this so much a romance as a weird, sexy monster moment, but it's definitely notable enough to receive a mention. Here Venom is bonded with Matt Gargan, Hawkeye is naked, and Venom is seen licking him from behind and very loosely and suggestively choking him, while Norman asks him where the other true Avengers are hiding out. It's all very sensual in a way that is odd and to me definitely implies Venom or Mac or some combination basically consider Hawkeye to be a hottie. That's how it's made to look anyways. I can't blame them though, I feel like Clint Barton is definitely a hottie, so yeah. Number 9. Flash Thompson and Valkyrie. This was a relationship that happened during the Secret Avengers when Flash Thompson as Agent Venom was on the team. I know I said I'd be focusing on Eddie Brock and Venom relationships, but this one also technically involves Venom through Flash and is too weird for me to just not include. Also, Flash was Agent Venom for quite a while in the comics, so I feel like we can just definitely count him in. This relationship was more strange because it was just so out of the blue. I don't have anything against it, but even Valkyrie Brunhilde acknowledged the awkwardness and decided to take matters into her own hands by basically jumping Flash Thompson's bones. It was a strange, secret relationship, but I guess what do you expect on the Secret Avengers? Seems oddly fitting, if not a bit abrupt. Alright friends, before we move on to that next point, it's that part of the video where I do the YouTube thing and I say, hey, click this like cause it helps us. But seriously, click this like cause it helps us. Number 8. Venom and Mary Jane. Another strange romance for sure. Venom basically left MJ traumatized when the two first met to the point that she was terrified of them and has had various disturbing experiences with them throughout her history. And yet, this is comics, and histories are long, so pretty much anyone can end up with anyone. Also, this is MJ, and I feel like everyone just wants to ship her with everyone because, I mean, MJ's a hottie, so yeah. These two haven't gotten romantic in the traditional sense, but there have been a few moments where Venom has seemingly pined for Mary Jane, resenting the fact that Eddie always seems to get the girl, despite the fact that he is usually the one messing up those relationships. Which is very strange, especially considering how much Venom seems to pine for Eddie, but anyways. Once again, Venom is definitely a jealous creature by nature, which we've seen time and time again in the comics. We have also seen the symbiote bond with Mary Jane, much to her own chagrin, and despite the likely conflicted feelings of MJ fans at this happening. But yeah, it's a weird and problematic thing, and it's there. So let's just acknowledge it. Number 7. Eddie Brock and Liz Allen. A romance that never really amounted to anything other than Eddie trying to make a move on Liz, who pretty much just always rejects him. This attempt at a romance was made even weirder too when Venom revealed their jealousy of Liz, although I get it, they want Eddie all to themselves. Why bother with Liz when Eddie has a perfectly good romantic partner in Venom? The whole thing is pretty weird though, Venom feeling the need to compete with Liz for Eddie's attention, when really, who has more of Eddie's time than Venom themselves? They basically have a monopoly on it. They spend most of their time bonded to the guy, but the whole exchange here is made even more strange by the fact that Liz doesn't really reciprocate Eddie's romantic interest to begin with. So there isn't that much even for Venom to be jealous of, other than I guess Eddie's wandering eye. Venom's like, Eddie, I see your eyes wandering and just look at me. Just look at your symbiote. Look at yourself in the mirror, basically. Number 6. Venom and SpiderMan. One of the greatest unrequited love stories of all time. Poor Venom just wanted to bond with Spider-Man, but Spider-Man was having none of it. This was truly a rough time for the symbiote, who just was getting rejected left, right, and center until he fell into the lap of Eddie Brock, who seemed to also share his hatred for Spider-Man, and the two basically encouraged a sense of hate and kinda rage in one another initially because of this negative experience that Venom had originally with Peter Parker. If you don't believe me that this was a romance of sorts, just look at the name of the issue where the two kind of break up more permanently in Web of Spider-Man. The name of the story where the suit attempts to once more bond Peter unsuccessfully, who shakes it off with the sonic disruptance of some loud bells ringing, is called Till Death Do Us Part. Sounds pretty romantic to me. Definitely some strange, sad, and unrequited love there. Poor Venom, they're always being rejected by Spider-Man, continuously. Number 5. Venom and Lee Price. Lee Price really messed up Venom. Their relationship was weird in the worst of ways. Venom bonded to Lee when it was desperate for a host, but Lee ended up taking control of the symbiote and using it to do all kinds of terrible things and kill people. Not that the symbiote hadn't killed people before, I mean it had, but the huge difference here was this was very much against Venom's will, and Price would often use it to target people regardless of their alignment, which Venom has always been conflicted about, while with Eddie it was against hurting innocents for the most part. But Lee didn't care about what Venom wanted or its feelings. Basically, this relationship between Price and Venom, while not inherently romantic explicitly, was meant to symbolize the most toxic kind of romantic relationship. An abusive one. Number 4. Venom and Beck Underwood. This one was pretty weird because Beck seemed to be super into it at first. Well, I mean for a time anyways. Like most people, she ended up ultimately being turned off by the whole combo deal of Venom and Eddie Brock together. In the end, the whole dating of both the symbiote and Eddie ended up just being too much for her. It got pretty strange too when Beck asked Eddie about his relationship with the suit and wanted to make sure it was healthy. One of the things that I actually didn't really like about her was how she got kind of a bit judgy when she felt the need to seek clarity on if Eddie was really enamored with Venom because he just hadn't found an adequate and committed woman to settle down with. Let Eddie love his alien suit, I say. Just let it happen. But I totally understand that it can be a lot for someone to get involved with both Eddie Brock and, you know, the alien that is Venom. That's a lot. In the end, the two ended up parting on amicable terms, with Beck giving both Eddie and Venom one last kiss and hug. And Venom was also super heartbroken about it. They were like, no, please don't leave us. Number 3. Eddie Brock and Ashley Kafka. This one comes to us not from the comics, but instead from the Spider-Man animated series out of the 90s. Here, Dr. Ashley Kafka was the person treating Eddie Brock during his time at Ravencroft Institute for the criminally insane. Eddie insisted that he was Venom, but Dr. Kafka believed that he was just delusional and that stress had basically caused him to lash out and to believe that he was the villain Venom, when he actually wasn't. This relationship was weird on the premise that it was a patient and doctor relationship turned romance, and the fact that both fell in love with one another while Ashley kinda thought Eddie was imagining being Venom and was at the time insane. So yeah. It got even weirder when Carnage got involved and caused a bunch of chaos that caused Eddie to save the day once reunited with the Venom symbiote. In the end, they were unable to be together as Venom got sucked into a magical portal in order to save Ashley. Don't you just hate it when a magical portal and multiple villains prevent you from being with the one you love? I know I do. Number 2. Eddie Brock and Wang. And Venom? This relationship basically got super weird in a bad way for Anne when Venom got involved. Anne and Eddie were originally married, but after Eddie lost his dad and his job, Anne couldn't take sort of the dark path that he was headed down and left him. This of course only put Eddie in an even darker place, and then he found the Venom symbiote. Together, their combined hatred for Spider-Man turned them into a villain, but Eddie still longed for Anne and wanted to make things right. They kind of ended up back together for a bit, but this also made things worse for Anne, who was left traumatized and feeling violated after bonding with Venom herself. She didn't like the person that she and the symbiote were together, she Venom, nor what it did to Eddie. And it was all this trauma that actually caused Anne to be unable to leave her apartment for months, and later resulted in her taking her own life after Eddie and Venom confronted her once more and were super clueless when it came to just how fragile Anne's emotional and mental state was at the time. Because Spider-Man was also present at the time and also freaking Anne out though, Eddie of course continued to blame him for his problems and for the death of his ex-wife. Number 1. Symbrock. This is really the love story for the ages, but is also one of the strangest ones out there. Eddie falling in love with a symbiotic alien suit who it turns out is its own living entity, and vice versa. This is confirmed in the comics as the two have expressed their love for one another and even at times bickered like a married couple. They also call each other things like love and dear, so yeah, that's pretty coupley in my opinion. Not only that, but Eddie has helped Venom deliver children, even though those children are technically kinda just Venom's who reproduces asexually. But still, Venom considered Eddie to basically be the father of their children, so yeah. And also, Eddie helped the symbiote to deliver, in essence, their symbiote child together, Sleeper, bonding with Venom while it was in essence giving birth. This labor was a hard one, and Eddie bonded with Venom to help it through and to help stabilize his partner, not just in this labor, but also in heroics, crime, and in a way, love. Aside from this moment, we have seen tons of other moments where the pair chose to be together and support one another in a pretty intimate way. At the end of the day, these two together are one of the weirdest and sweetest romances on this list. So many sweet and terribly weird romances here. Just really weird romances of all kinds with Venom, Venom hosts, Venoms, you know what I mean. What is your favorite Venom relationship? Are there any that you think are just not weird at all? Let us know in the comments below. I feel like it's hard to actually date a symbiote and it not be weird at all. It's gonna be weird to an extent, I think. Till next time, this has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, saying thanks for watching and reminding you to stay nerdy, YouTube. We've also seen the symbiote bond with Mary Jane, much to her own chagrin, and despite chagrin, is that how you say that?
Chagrin.
Chagrin? Chagrin?
Much to her own chagrin.
I always say it chagrin.
But the
chagrin.
Before the R.
Yeah, I know. Chagrin.
Chagrin? I say
chagrin?
Chagrin.
Do you say chagrin?
I'm looking it up. No,
I think it's, yeah, I always say chagrin, but I know I say it wrong because I'm adding an R.
Yeah, it's chagrin, like I said.
Chagrin? Wow, I've been saying that wrong for forever. What is chagrin? What am I saying when I'm saying? I must be doing some sort of British thing again. It must be some sort of weird British thing that's worked its way into my vocab.
Chagrin.
Chagrin. Chagrin. Just sounds like you're smiling, but you're not because you're like distressed and freaking out usually. Interesting. We learned something today.